Welcome to the Black Male Impact. Today we have as guest Dr. Stephen Graves. Dr. Graves, welcome to the Black Male Impact.
Thank you. I appreciate it very much. Thanks for having me.
Man, it's a pleasure. Dr. Graves is the founder of Troublesome Movement, a nonprofit with a mission to serve minority and underrepresented communities, and he's an experienced researcher with demonstrated history in working in higher education industry. But before we get into the conversation itself, I'm going to allow Dr. Graves to share more about himself before we start the conversation. So Dr. Graves, please share more about yourself so the listeners can have an idea of who you are and some of the things that you have done and have accomplished.
Wonderful. Thank you. Like I said, I'm the founder of Troublesome Movement, a nonprofit 501c3 that I started back in 2012. That's really kind of aimed at taking, the kind of knowledge and expertise that I have in politics and trying to make it applicable and practical to the community and community empowerment and upliftment. So I'm very proud of that. In my day job, I'm a full-time assistant professor in the Department of Political Science and Center for Africana Studies at Oklahoma State University. I got my PhD in political science from Howard University in Washington, D.C. I specialize in Black politics, political theory, and American government. I just recently had a book that came out in November, At War with Politics, that's about the kind of political journey from traditional political science and how it relates to Black identity and Black politics. In 2016, I had a book out on Black leadership called The Crisis of Leadership in the Black Community. That really kind of focuses on Black leadership post-1970 and kind of where we are in contemporary Black America versus today. My main research areas are in, Black political thought, Black politics and voting behavior, Black nationalism and Pan-Africanism. And so my main, ideas and research areas really kind of focus on, Black self-determination, Black upliftment, Black empowerment. Originally from Portland, Oregon, so I'm well versed in kind of liberal politics and liberal ideology and predominantly white institutions and towns. But now, of course, being in Oklahoma and formerly at the University of Missouri in the Department of Black Studies there, I'm learning and gaining a lot of traction, in conservative red states and conservative politics. So I've been doing a little bit more reading and research in Black conservatism and those kind of ideas. So again, it's a pleasure to be here. I enjoy and I kind of watched, this movement and what you do for the last couple of years going forward. And so I'm excited to be a part of it and excited to be here and help out.
Man, it's a pleasure. And just listening to the work that you're doing. And as you shared, the crisis with Black leadership, hopefully we can touch on that piece as we go through the conversation. But man, I just appreciate the work that you're doing for the Black community. It is needed. And as we move forward, we need that type of focus and work so we can move the needle forward. So what we're going to do as we start this conversation, I normally start off with this question. What is the mindset that it takes to make a positive impact?
What does it take to make a positive impact?
Yes, the mindset that it takes to make a positive impact.
Courage and confidence, borderline arrogance. But I tell you what, in this day and age of self-bravado and a lot of selflessness that's going on currently, it takes a lot. If you really want to make changes, if you really want to empower other people, it takes courage and thick skin, and it takes a level of confidence. Or else it is. There's a lot of people out there who don't feel like they are able to make the kind of change that they want. And they take their own inability out and their own frustrations out on other people who are doing the work. And so, with this line of work, with trying to make positive changes in the Black community, and particularly, you got to have thick skin. You've got to be courageous. You can't be afraid of ruffling feathers and making people uncomfortable. It comes with a lot of ridicule. It comes with being called names. It comes with, being mocked and ridiculed and all those things that come along with it. And so, the focus really from a mindset really is just will. I talk to my students all the time about strength of will and willpower and the ability to make yourself commit and dedicate and do things that you're not comfortable with and that you normally probably would not do, but are in your best benefit. And so the mindset is always one of willpower, of strength of will, and of courage and of confidence, being unshaken, being a good listener and listening to other ideas and people who are doing the work out there. But putting it into your system, putting it into your engine, putting it into your motor, that then enables you and allows you to do what the best that you can be. You can't help anybody else if you're not 100% yourself. I tell students this all the time, especially when it comes to relationships and things like that. 100% of yourself is what's required. And you can never let anybody take that away from you. And you can never let anybody diminish or try to take away from your power, and where that power comes from, as in your work and in your deeds and in the things that you accomplish, and in your character, how you present and carry yourself, and the actions that you take in order to uplift others around you. Being a servant, servant leadership when you're trying to make change. It's not just so much about yourself, even if you are trying to build yourself up and empower yourself and make yourself a valued member of the community. In the back of your mind, in hindsight, the end game is never about yourself. It's always about what you do for others, what you can do for your family, what you do for your community. And so the mindset is always one of progress, strength and courage. It's always one of confidence, and strong will and strong willpower, and being unshaken and being able to confidently step into, the fire, step into uncomfortable situations, and not feel like you have to buck or change or be shaken by anything that someone else says that's looking to tear you down or discourage you. And that's the mindset that I go into every single day when I wake up.
Man, it is so true with what you shared, especially courage and confidence, and having the will and be willing to show up despite the opinions of others, and make sure we don't lose ourselves in the process, because people will want to tell us how to show up, how to be, because if we conform to their ideology of who we should be, it makes them comfortable. And the work that needs to be done to move us forward, some people will have to be uncomfortable in the process of making those changes. So as you shared those different perspective and mindset that we need to have, it is something that we need to hear over and over, especially when you are committed to doing the work. Because when you are committed to doing the work, it's not easy. You're going to get pushbacks. And if you get pushbacks, what are you going to do? Are you going to stop? So you sharing those different perspective and mindset that we need to have in doing the work, it is important that those who are committed hear those sentiments over and over, because if you're committed, you need a reminder, you need the encouragement, you need the motivation, you need the support, and need a voice from other people who are doing the work. So I appreciate you sharing that perspective. Right now, I'm not remembering everything that you have shared, but I know the value of being courageous when it comes to being a person of change. And one thing that, as you shared, I want to just reshare, and that is the work that we're doing is not about us. It's about service. It's about helping our community. It's about helping the next generation. So I really, appreciate, your perspective and your commitment to doing the work that matters. And that leads me to my next question. What advice do you have for the men listening, and how they can play a role in creating positive change?
Seek knowledge at all times. Intellectualism and knowledge acquisition for its own sake. It may not always make you money, but it will give you perspective. It will give you some insight on what you're experiencing and what's going on around you. Pick up books and read and listen to other different perspectives. Life is not always about affirmation. Sometimes it's about information. And information sometimes is going to contradict what you think and what you know, what you've seen and what you believe. But you have to at least be willing to entertain those ideas and look into those ideas and search for ideas that might be outside of your purview. knowledge and being able to learn about self, knowledge of your community and where you come from, learning about Black people, learning about where you come from in Africa, learning about, the consciousness of African consciousness and community. Those are the things, Wilson, that a lot of Black people in this country have been sorely lacking and sorely missing for years and years. The K through 12 is not going to teach Black people about ourselves. It's not going to teach us how to empower ourselves. It's not going to teach us about Black liberation and how to liberate ourselves from oppressive institutions and oppressive government and oppressive regimes and oppressive communities. And so the knowledge that is out there, seeking that knowledge and going after it and being willing to entertain it, even if it comes into conflict with your own personal life, if it comes in conflict with your own religious beliefs, if it comes in conflict with what you have already experienced and what you've been told, you still have to be willing to go there. Knowledge is the key. Know thyself. Because when you know thyself and you know what you're capable of and you know what your contribution is, it's much harder for people outside of the community to then infiltrate into your mindset and tell you what you are and tell you what you've done. A lot of times with the Black community, also, there's always someone outside the community telling us that we've never contributed anything, right? Or that we've come from a barbaric, uncivilized society. Well, if you have knowledge of Africa and knowledge of pre-colonial Africa and all the contributions of ancient Egyptians in Kemet and before then you will be much more equipped and prepared to respond to those criticisms. And that stuff is much more likely just to bounce right off you. Somebody coming to me and telling me that Black people have never contributed anything to society is fool's gold. I know better than that. Okay, I know where I come from. I know our history. I let that stuff flow right off my back. I don't even have the time to entertain that nonsense. But if I'm in intellectual circles or I have the opportunity to combat that, I come back with what I know. I come back with knowledge, what I've learned and what I've read and what I've experienced. And going to Africa and talking to people over there and to scholars who deal in the area. And so that is one way that we can just build that confidence and build that knowledge of self, build that knowledge of who we are. And that makes it a lot more difficult for people outside the community to come in and infiltrate and tell us where we come from. That cultural menticide, right? That cultural attack that people outside the Black community always try to instill in us whenever we try to improve ourselves. Like we should just be grateful and thankful for being in America. Like we should just be grateful and thankful for encountering white people and encountering American democracy and all those type of things. That's not the case. But it takes knowledge and understanding to be aware of that and to be able to combat that and to be able to contradict those ideas that continually try to tear Black people down. So knowledge, Black men especially. I know that there's a cultural world out there and being hip and trendy and all those things are important, especially for young ones, which I get. But there's going to come a time and day when you're going to be an adult and you're going to have to be able to, traverse into a real world that's not going to care so much about popularity and the things that happen culturally. And you're going to have some a mindset and have a knowledge base, a foundation of information that you can rely on when the world gets rough. All right. And when your conditions get rough. Okay. And the friends aren't calling, right? And the Facebook likes aren't coming. You have to have something to depend on and rely on. And the knowledge base, information and seeking knowledge has always been my go-to. And is what has allowed me to be successful despite discomfort and despite predominantly white institutions and despite a lot of adversity.
Man, you have shared such a great perspective that we all need at times the reminder, seeking knowledge. Because once you become aware, you no longer subject yourself to the false narratives, the stereotypes, the limitations, because now you know that we are not what they have said about us, the limitations they have placed on us. And I can tell you, when I start to learn about what we have done as Black people, it really empowered me. It empowered me to want to do more, want to share the knowledge. And I came across a quote that once I was on the journey, because as you shared, the importance of knowledge and knowledge of self, once you become conscious, you are now responsible to help the unconscious to become conscious, because we are amongst people who are not aware of how great they are. And if you're not aware of how great you are, then you are going to subject yourself to the limitations that society have painted, have carved out for us. So I really love your perspective of knowledge of self, knowledge of our community, knowledge of where we came from and the contributions that we have made to society. And yes, a lot of us have heard that we haven't contributed greatly to humanity, to mankind, but yet we are the foundation of the knowledge that they have built on, yet we haven't contributed greatly to humanity. And once we become aware of that knowledge, man, even on your hard days, you just want to go because
Yep.
you are standing on the shoulders of giants, people who have done the work for you not to be out here finding excuses. Yes, we're in a system that may not favor us,
Right.
but yet once you are aware that you are great, you have greatness in your DNA,
Yeah.
man, it gives you a different feeling.
It's a
You
game
just
changer.
want to. Go ahead.
That's it. It's a game changer. It's a game changer. What you allow people to say about you and your peoples and your community automatically changes. Automatically changes. It's so empowering. You're
Man,
absolutely right.
it is. And one thing that I really like, and I take a note of it, because you were saying so much, I just have to be listening. I couldn't be taking notes. I have to just listen. But as you shared, sometimes what we need is not affirmation, but information. Because sometimes, the affirmation tells us what we already know, but what we need is what we don't know. So we
Right.
can know what to do to go forward, not just for ourselves, but for our community, because we are supposed to help liberate those who are not liberated, who are still caught up in the system of being oppressed and thinking that they are limited. So I really appreciate that perspective. And as Black men, one of the things that we really have to do to move the needle forward is to seek knowledge, knowledge of self, knowledge of where we came from, and knowledge of our community and what we can contribute to our community. Man, I really, appreciate that perspective. And I know the listeners will appreciate that perspective as well. That leads me to my next question. How can we, as Black men, help to change the narrative today? I know, as you mentioned, knowledge, information, but how can we help to change the narrative today? You can speak from any perspective when it comes to changing the narrative.
The narrative is a difficult one to traverse. I'm learning continually about, the state of Black men. Most of it is as I attend these conferences, in Black studies, in political science, there's always these perceptions of what Black men are and what our standing is. And what I know is that Black men are suffering in this country, and we have found ourselves at the bottom end of many of the most important socioeconomic categories. Even in our own community, Black women have surpassed Black men in education, life expectancy, right? Managerial income and white collar jobs, all of these things, Black men are slowly falling behind. What it takes, to combat that narrative, Rosa, is that we've got to work together. That Black men have to, start and join and become members of groups and institutions of enliftment and empowerment. We have to rid ourselves of a certain amount of selfishness and materialism and all the things that are so easy for Black men to, fall victim to. Shiny things, not having nice things, all those things are important in the Black community. And I understand that a lot of us come from, poor conditions and come from, poverty in a lot of ways. But materialism, rampant selfishness, is not the way. Most of this, we have to, in the word of Angela, lift as we climb. We cannot just be climbing and leaving other brothers behind. Most of this, right? We have got to uplift other brothers as we're going. Because I tell you what, it's no fun being the only Black man in the room. Okay, it's no fun being the only Black person in the room. Okay, I don't like going into, dinners and meetings and conferences and institutions and see myself at the table as the only Black person there, and especially as the only Black man there. And so we have got to continually find and create spaces for other Black men, create institutions and practices that which we can fellowship with other Black men and share with other Black men our experiences and our ideas, right, and our contributions and work together. It's not as important that we get there by ourselves. It is important that we get there with other members of our community, who we can share with, right? And we can then fellowship with and that we can celebrate with, right? It's not all about the work. We've got to have fun too. We have to be able to celebrate and congratulate one another. But we can't congratulate one another if we're always in competition with one another. My brother is not my enemy. It's not my competition neither.
That's
Right.
right.
So we have got to continually produce and build and create ways and institutions and practice for which Black men can come together and share competitively, non-selfishly, Russell is, and non-materialistically, Russell is. We can share our ideas and our thoughts, our pain and suffering. We have got to get and tap into our mental health and find out where we are, because pain and suffering is out there and we all suffer, right? But, right, that fellowship, man, talking to another brother, is that you can share what you're going through. If anybody's going to have an understanding or know what you're dealing with, right, it's going to be somebody who's, who like you, who's been through a lot of things that you're going through and feeling a lot of things that you're feeling and dealing with a lot of things that you've been suffering through. And so the mindset, the way that we can, combat a lot of the, patriarchy stuff that's out there and Black men also this, constantly under attack about contributing to, the kind of misery of the Black community. We have got to build and create places and spaces for which Black men can come together and share and take care of our mental health and continually find ourselves in places where we can be vulnerable, as it is, with other Black men in a non-threatening, non-competitive way.
Man, again, your response is so profound and needed in our community, and as a great reminder to us as Black men and of the importance of coming together, working together, and not seeing each other as competition. Because as you shared, which is the knowledge that most of us are aware of, that we are at the bottom, almost, especially the Black women have passed us. Not to say we are competing with Black women. We should be working together, of course, but we have a responsibility as Black men to move forward, because once we are up, it's easier to lift the sisters up. You see what I'm saying? Because we should be there lifting the sisters up. But if we are at the back and competing against each other, we are just pulling each other from getting to where we are capable of going, not realizing that if we support, it makes it easier for us all to go forward. And if we fight against each other, no one's making progress.
Right.
No one's making progress. And then no one have the resources to really put us forward. And the point that you've made that I really think is important, that when we're in rooms and it's just us alone, it can be challenges. It's important that we lift our brothers as we go. But in lifting our brothers, us as Black men need to have that awareness and the importance that it's about us making it together to go to heights. It's not about you getting the opportunity and being selfish about the opportunity. It's about what we can do collectively to move the needle forward. And, I think it is so important that we remember how important it is to be a part of the process of helping each other to make progress, to lift as we climb, to fellowship with each other. And as you shared, we know what it's like to be a Black man. So if we're struggling, if we have that safe space, it makes it easier for another brother to understand what you're going through. And it is something that we sometimes are uncomfortable with in sharing our challenges, what we're going through, because that is also a part of what we have been conditioned to think about ourselves. We're not going to talk about what we're going through, but yet we are still struggling, especially as you mentioned, on the mental health piece. But even before we go to the next question, what are your thoughts on the mental health in the Black community and Black men? Do you find, like in your circle of influence, do you find the Black men talking about it? Or are they still reluctant in talking about their struggles and mental health?
They're still reluctant, especially again, I'm in the the college education system. So I'm talking 18 to 22-year-olds, right? And their willingness to be vulnerable, We talk about black masculinity in my Black popular culture class, and the number of men in my class who are willing to admit that they cry, right? Or what they cry about, if they do cry, is limited at best and very minimal, right? I mean, there's more Black women than men in the class, in all of my classes, really. And I think that's holding true across college campuses. And so there is this level of, right, I've got to portray this strength, I've got to portray being a strong person, or else it is, especially the opposite sex. But amongst the few Black men that are in my, that are in my group or that are in my class with me, I don't want to come off looking soft, right? I want to portray myself as someone who's able to build and be a leader, and else it is, and strong and courageous. So there's not that level of vulnerability amongst, again, I'm an 18 to 22-year-old, 23-year-old college students, college age Black men. And so even discussing mental health and what they're afraid of, right? What are your fears? What I'm saying? What causes you to have anxiety? Or else it is. Is there a fear of failure, right? Is there a fear of letting your family down? All those kind of things that are very important, especially for college kids who are separated from their family now in some instances, or who move away, or feel like now that I'm in college, I've got to make this thing work because my family's dependent on me and things like that. Well, that responsibility comes with a level of transgression, a little fear about maybe I won't make it. But that is something that they're very reluctant to kind of attack and to look into. That popularity contest, that portrayal and perception of being a strong Black man is still out there, and I get the importance of that too as well. But vulnerability, right? Being able to share and express what you're feeling inside is important, because what we'll find is you're not the only one feeling like that.
Correct.
You're not the only one who's feeling that way. You're not the only one who's dealing with those emotions, brother. And then so the quicker, so as soon as one person's willing to share that vulnerability with another brother, you might find yourself again going down a road that you might not have thought you'd go down. But what you'll find is another brother's going down that road with you. And that is what's important. But there's a lot of reluctance still as far as mental health goes. But that's something that we've got to continually try to address and mention as we continue to go along.
Man, thanks for sharing that, because that's a real challenge. Because even when I'm working with young Black male students, that's one of the things that normally come up, that lack of being vulnerable. Don't want to talk about their challenges. But whenever you find one person start talking and sharing, you find more start to share, because once they see another, that's why, as you mentioned, having those safe space. Because once one start to talk about their challenge, you find the others get a little bit more open about sharing their challenges as well. And that leads me to my next question. I know you have been in African American study, political science, and you have been doing the work for the minority community. So my question to you is, what or who has influenced or inspired you to pursue the path that you're on?
In my immediate circle, I would say my mother, for one, right? I grew up in a single parent household, right? My mom worked 2 jobs, all the way through K through 12 and even through college, so I could go to college and whatnot. She originally wanted me to be a lawyer when I went to undergrad, and she used to have me watching Perry Mason when I was a child. But she got multiple sclerosis when I was a sophomore in high school. And that was a moment that I knew that I had to make a move. I had to do something. I had 2 older brothers who had moved out by then. And so I felt the responsibility at that moment, Russell, that I got to make it work, and I've got to do something to provide and take care of my family. Outside of that, historical figures, I must say, Malcolm X is probably one of the most strongest political figures that I still identify with and teach and research and read about a lot. Self-determination, ability to do for self, and having that strong mindset about independence and what it means to be an independent, liberator, and to teach Black people that we can do our own thing, that we don't necessarily have to conform and fit in all the time, that Black people have a knowledge base and we have a strength of community. That means we can build our own institutions and create our own way of life, that we have our own set of morals and we have our own set of character and we have our own standards. And these were all foreign to me when I was in high school until I got to college and started, getting into these things. Again, I went to predominantly white institutions in high schools. And so that, that MLK influence about assimilation and fitting in and just trying to integrate into these places was the popular thing. That was widespread knowledge. And so it wasn't until I got introduced really to Malcolm, who was saying, no, we don't have to do that. We've got our own knowledge. We've got our own thing. We have our own character and values and way about solving our own problems. Black people can solve our own problems. That we do not have to be dependent on government, and we definitely don't need to rely on whites to solve Black people's problems. And so for me as a teenager, that was something new, again, from predominantly white institutions where integration, assimilation, and MLK was the thing. Culturally, for me, somebody who built me on this path to knowledge and being a teacher, the way that I do things, was Tupac Shakur. Because again, when I was in high school and going on to college, he was the person who, in the culture that you could listen to on the radio and see on TV, who said, we don't have to do it this way. Black men, we're trapped, right? We can do things our own way. And you can be unapologetically Black. No matter how you dress, doesn't matter how the tattoos, you can have the beard, whatever else it is, all that stuff doesn't matter, right? It's the work, it's the heart, it's being true, it's being real, being your authentic self. And again, for a Black person and a young Black male, and he's talking about young Black males, what it's like being life of a young Black male trapped in these predominantly white spaces, and what that means, and the violence that is portrayed out there and that we are witness to, and the obstacles that we face in a prison system and incarceration, all those things. And he's talking to a young Black male. I'm 16, 17, 18, and this. And here comes this guy on TV, on the radio, telling Black men, right? We're trapped in this wicked society. But again, you can come out of it doing it your own way. You don't have to, again, like Malcolm, you don't have to conform to this integrated system. If there is a way of going about things, Will, it is that you can be unapologetically real, who you are, the ups and downs, the pitfalls, the crying, the adversity, everything. You put all that concoction into a pot, and that's you. And now you just step out and take it, and you just go out into the world and you portray that persona and who you are. Blew my mind as a teenager. Again, I had never heard stuff like that before from a Black person, right? Who wasn't trying to just assimilate and fit in and try to be one of the people. No. He's like, nope, I don't need that at all. We got our own thing once again, and I don't care what other people are saying. This is me. And again, for me, that was a game changer. I at that moment, I was just going to unapologetically just be myself. And I just knew that as long as I worked hard, as long as I just, stuck to it, had that courage, gained that knowledge base, that I could go out there and do anything, that I could change the world if I wanted to, if I was just unapologetically myself and just a real person that people could see and gravitate towards. That it's benefited me with my students, it benefits me with my family life. People can just interact with me and talk with me as just a real person, despite the PhD, despite whatever accolades, despite whatever I've got going on. I'm just a normal person, Russell is, and I speak truth to power unapologetically, and I'm just a real person. And I think that people can gravitate towards that. And I had never encountered that before until, I got into, high school and was introduced to a popular figure, again, that you could listen to on the radio and see on TV that wasn't necessarily in the books. This was a real guy who was out there who was saying these things. And it just changed my life.
Man, I'm listening, and I know the listeners are listening as well. But I can tell you, man, from your mother, from Malcolm X and Tupac Shakur, because of you seen your mother working 2 jobs and you want to do something different. But when you got introduced to Malcolm X and realized that you don't have to conform to society expectation or just to belittle yourself to be accepted. I know that can be empowering. And, I'm going to come back to the Malcolm X and being empowered and stuff like that. But as you shared with Tupac and how he's reminding you at a young age or telling you at a young age that you can be unapologetically you. And I think, like, listen to the songs today. The songs are not saying that. The songs are not empowering our young people. The songs are leading our young people astray. The songs are making our young people succumb to or become that which have been painted about us. So we want songs or artists like Tupac to remind the young people and do it unapologetic. I know there are artists out there who are saying some positive things. I just are not really fully aware of the artists, that are out there sharing, uplifting and positive messages. But as you talk about Malcolm X and being reminded or being told that, look, you can be yourself, you can be the best version of yourself, despite what society want to tell you. You are coming from what greatness looks like. So you don't have to succumb or conform to what society want you to be. And I think that is just empowering because our young people today are not really exposed in that sense. It's like our young people lose the interest of seeking knowledge, I would say. Not to say it's their fault. Some of it is our responsibility to make sure we create that environment, that platform, that foundation for them. But I think back then, Black people, they were hungry for knowledge to learn because they're coming out of a system that have oppressed them for so long. So now I have access. I want this. And I think we are moving away from that. You know, the music, of course, really derailed some of the work that those before us have done to really put us forward. And it's why, as Black men, especially, we have a responsibility, we have an obligation to make sure we create an environment, a space, a platform, so we can help to change the mindset of the next generation. Because if we don't, things are not going to get better if we don't create that space and cultivate the desire to want more, to do more, to make progress, and to make a positive impact for those who are coming behind. But man, listening to you sharing is just so profound, and it's a needed reminder, the importance of what we need to do as we move forward on this journey and be willing to speak truth to power. That is something that, as you shared, I think it is important. And it boils down to, as you mentioned in the beginning of the conversation, it takes courage, because if you know what to say and are not willing to say it, then it's not going to make any difference. You just have to be willing to share what you know will help our community to believe and to own their greatness. And stop depending on others to do for us what we should be doing for ourselves. I support you on that. We are more than capable of solving a lot of our problems, but that comes with us working together collectively. We have the resources, we have the creativity, we have the knowledge, we have the resilience, we have all of that. So we can do a lot of what we sometimes are waiting to be done for us, man. But listening to you, sharing your perspective, it is so important and a great reminder to all of us on this journey to make a difference. And that leads me to my next question. What is your perspective on the climate of Black men in society today?
Rough. We're in a rough spot right now, for a plethora of reasons. I feel like we're under attack on multiple fronts. There's a war going on out there. And again, it's being fought on multiple fronts. And I don't feel like, we're doing a good enough job collectively as Black men to address and fight on all fronts, intellectually, culturally, familially, relationship-wise. Our relationships with Black women, our relationships with our family and kids, and on all those things are in rough times right now. And I get it, the economy and jobs, and that, the Black men are just trying to, find a way just to survive, and money is funny, and all those things are happening. But there's no excuse for our collective efforts not to be recognized, and for us not to be utilizing our time and efforts to combat the stereotypes and the perception of Black men that are pervasive in this country right now, as violent and as criminals and as prison, the school to prison pipeline, and all the rhetoric that continually surrounds Black men as absentee fathers, even though most of that stuff is completely inaccurate. We're not doing a good job of of exercising our thoughts, or else it is to combat that out in the public space. Why do these pervasive ideas continue to gain ground? And where are the Black men out there in the community or out there publicly, or else it is to dispel and to confront unapologetically and honestly a lot of these things? Again, Black men have fallen behind in so many different socioeconomic categories, not competing with our own sisters, but outside of our own community, right? In the Hispanic community, in the Asian community, obviously, and all these other communities who are finding ways to progress. And as Black men who continually are finding ourselves, unprepared. And we're not getting the mentorship, we're not getting the leadership, we're not getting Black men out there on the forefront who are saying, no, that's not the way, right? And have the courage to say so, because again, like we've said, there's going to be some pushback, right? This is the whole pull your pants up thing. You can tell that to a young Black man, but you got to be prepared for what comes and for the talk that comes along with that. But that doesn't mean it doesn't have to be said. But those things have to be said in a plethora of categories. Why are we spending 4 hours in line for $400 pair of shoes when you live in your parents' basement and don't even have a car and all these other things? Our priorities, right? Our priorities for Black men is just a little off. But again, I understand and I get it that we come from poverty and we've come from sometimes some very stressful situations. And a lot of times we're just looking for a piece of, a slice of happiness. We just want to, feel like it's like the world is not all that bad. And so if, having a nice pair of shoes, or, even though I'm poor, is the way that I at least find it, I understand that. I get it, but our priorities are not aimed in a productive, empowering, developmental way for which we need. And we need more courageous Black men out there, to speak on a lot of these issues and not be afraid, of the talk that's going to come in regards to patriarchy and, the nuclear family and all those things. I get that those are hot button issues that liberals love to dispel. I know that the patriarchy is a thing out there that feminists and that women love, but that is not the case for us that Black men are identifying with, and that is not what Black men are experiencing. We do not have the same conditions and resources of white men and other groups out there to be contributing to some suffering of Black community and to some patriarchy. That stuff is just inaccurate. But we still have a role to play as men. And there is such a thing out there, as manhood and masculinity, that Black people will have to experience and that Black men have to come into their own and finding and identifying with what those things are. But it takes other Black men to lead them. Now, again, I come from a single parent household with my mother. And so I understand that you've got to seek that. It's not always going to be in your home for a lot of us. But you have to be willing to go out there and identify Black men who are doing the things that need to be done, right? That you can then reach out to. Don't be afraid to ask questions of another brother that's out there that's doing it better than you are. Just because he's doing it better than you are at a moment doesn't mean that you can't do it better yourself. So you have got to be willing to, right? Seek that knowledge that's out there. Find Black men that you can fellowship with and get those ideas from. But that older generation of Black men, we have got to do a better job of reaching out and reaching down and uplifting our young folks and whatnot. And we just have not done a better job. Especially, culturally as wise. I get it. Again, wealth and the Jay-Z's and the LeBron James and the wealthy is the thing. And we think that wealth is going to solve all our problems. I'm here to tell you, wealth doesn't solve all of our problems. Okay. You can be called an N-word in rich white communities as well. Okay. And rich white people won't like you anymore just because you're rich. Right. So you think you're going to be able to escape these trials of manhood. But the only way to escape those trials of manhood is through fellowship and through a community that you can rely on. And that supports you and uplifts you, that you also contribute to in its development and upliftment, right? That you have places and spaces, it is to fellowship and convene in. And we have got to do a better job of that because we are in a rough spot, education-wise. I work, again, at a university. Black women are attending college at twice the rate of Black men, right? My classrooms are probably 80% female, 20% male. And from talking to some of my other colleagues and other scholars who are here at the conferences that I've been at, they're dealing with a very similar situation, that Black men are being lapped in educational experience, right? We're being lapped versus economic too as well. So, for Black men, I would say another thing, I get the purpose of education, but there's some good trades out there, that you can really do some really good things. And we've got to do a better job, of opening our eyes to some other opportunities out there that we can utilize to uplift our communities. And it may not always be in the classroom. It may not always be on the football field or sports, but there's other ways that they can be introduced to that'll be helpful for Black men to uplift one another and our community.
I'm here thinking, how should I respond to such a response? But man, it's just great to hear you sharing it and just reinforcing some of the things that we need to do as Black men. As you point out that yes, we're in a rough spot. Yes, there are Black men making progress. Yes, there are Black men achieving PhDs. Yes, there are Black men in leadership roles. Yes, there are Black men making progress, but yet there are still so many of us as Black men not making the progress that we are more than capable of making. And some of the things that you have shared, which those who are in the front, or those who are leading, or those who are in spaces, need to be courageous in talking about the things that will help us to move forward, which comes from being mentors or leaders. And we have to be the type of mentor. I strongly believe this wholeheartedly, that we cannot be saying things and not modeling it. We have to show up as we are sharing the information, and because that's going to be the more have a greater impact when we're sharing and mentoring. Our presence will have a greater impact when we show up and represent what we are saying. Be proud of who we are, despite what society is saying about us, and just again finding ways to make progress. And as you shared, Ben, which research have shared, where Black males are not in the classroom, as when you compare Black men to female, there are more females in the classroom than Black males. So we have to encourage our Black men. But as you shared, it doesn't have to be they pursuing careers in four-year education. We can direct them to opportunities that they can do that sometimes will make them a better living than just getting a college education, a four-year college education, because some of the trades do pay a lot more than going to college and get a four-year degree to work in an organization. So those are some of the things that we have to do. We have that responsibility when it comes to what we can do as Black men in the current climate. As you mentioned, we need to, which comes down to having the courage to publicly dispel the false narratives. If we don't talk about the things that affects us, if we sit back and just watch, then nothing is going to change. Because again, we have to change it. Society is not going to change something that's not really going to benefit them, really, but more so benefit us. So we have to change the things that will benefit us and be willing to address those narratives that really don't have a positive impact on us as Black men as we go forward in society. And this question is somewhat close to what you have already been talking about, but I'm still going to ask the question because I just love how you kind of share the perspective and how we as Black men can create change. So my question to you is, what change do you want to see in general and amongst Black men?
Sun kind of hit me here. What the change I want to see: fellowship, institution building. I want to see Black men coming together on positive issues, on positive causes, doing things that people don't normally align with or see Black men doing. We talk about the trades. We talk about farming and agriculture, stepping outside of the norms. I want to see community empowerment and building. I want to continually see, Black men and not in competition with one another, but uplifting one another. Again, lifting as we climb, the progress that we're making. I want to see more Black men finding themselves in positions to which they can help and mentor and lead up other Black men. I want to see Black men in positive roles and positive positions in their communities, right? As fire chiefs, as police chiefs, as principals, as council members. I want to see Black men active in their communities, Russell, and visible in their communities. I want to see Black men taking stances, taking chances too, right? And being vulnerable, right? Being able to take a risk, having the chance and having the opportunity that may not normally come into Black places and spaces, but being willing to step out there and step out on faith right, and step out being courageous, right, and try to fulfill those roles. Black men need to be much more visible in our own communities, outside of sports and entertainment. More Black teachers. Oh, the percentage of Black male teachers in this country continues to diminish, right? Finding ourselves in classrooms where we are visible. I have so many students that I'm the first Black professor they've ever had, or the first Black teacher they've ever had, let alone the first Black male teacher that they've ever had. And so we have got to step into those roles that are not traditionally seen as powerful, strong Black male roles, right? More Black nurses, more Black teachers, more Black doctors, all of those things, right? We have to be in all aspects for which Black people find themselves in. Black men need to be in those places as well. Somewhere in the mix, for wherever you find a Black community, wherever you find Black people at conversing or community in a community or collectivizing in, a Black man needs to be there somewhere, visible and communicating the needs and the stances for which Black men can be strong and powerful and uplifting and contribute to the upliftment of all of our peoples, men and women and children and our elders and ancestors, right? All aspects of the Black community, a Black man has a role to play. And we have got to be visible in those roles that we play in all aspects of Black life, not just sports and entertainment, not just in politics, but we've got role to play in all aspects of our education, of our children's life, and fatherhood. I love the girl dad movement. That has been one of the things that in the last couple of years that I have really grown a sense of pride in, right? The girl dad movement of dads showing up for their daughters in ways and places and spaces. We need more of that in all aspects of Black life, right? Because we are to lead, right? There is still a traditional role out there of masculinity and manhood out there. And we need to step into some of those roles in all aspects of Black community life.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Just listening to you, I know your students may just enjoy being in the classroom, being that you're in the classroom and you're sharing, but just listening to, again, your perspective, it is really profound. But I can just imagine how appreciative your students are, being that you have shared that some of your students, you are the first Black male teacher or professor they had. So it's just, and as you shared, some of the things that, we can do in general as Black men is become visible, which is really needed despite where we are. We have to realize how important being visible. They need to see us in every spaces that we are so we can make the change. And we not only to make the changes, but also to change the perception and the misconceptions that society may have of us. I know there is a research that states that more Black teachers in the classroom don't only affect the Black male students, they also affect all other students because, and they find that from the research, those classes with Black males have better, outstanding results.
That's right.
So as you shared that we need to be in those spaces because we are so needed and the impact that we have in those spaces is tremendous. So sometimes we just don't get the opportunity, but we have to be willing, as you mentioned, to take that stance and take those chances. We have to go after those roles as if we are expected, to get there. We may not get all those that which we go after, but if we don't go after it because we're thinking that society is not going to give it to us or we're not going to get it, we're not going to get it. But if we take those chances and go after it, we'll be surprised and get those opportunities that are out there where we can make a tremendous contribution to our communities and just the society at large. But again, I appreciate your perspective on what you need to see in general when it comes to Black men. So my next question is, what was a pivotal moment in your life?
Being homeless. When I for the first 6 months that I was a graduate student, I was homeless at the University of Nevada. It was my first time being in Nevada, but I had, I had to pray her, to go to grad school. And I told the Lord, if you get me in, I don't care how I get there or what I do when I get there, but if you get me in, I'm going. And there was the first lesson I learned about praying in specifics, because I got exactly word for word what I prayed for. Nothing more, nothing less. I got in, it was paid for, but I had no job, no place to live, no nothing. But I had to go down there because I had given my word and I was committed to following through. And so being homeless for 6 months in a place like Nevada with all the casinos and the gambling and the widespread wealth, that was tough, but I wouldn't change it for the world because that is where I learned and gained into my strength about who I was and learned what my power was and that will that we talked about. And having no place to go, eating on $2 a day, trying to stay warm in casinos at night, roast it is, in the wintertime, trying to find, scraps of bottled water and places like that in casinos and find a way. That is exactly what I needed to fully take what I had learned in the classroom previously, what we talked about as far as Malcolm X and as far as Tupac Shakur and those kind of things, and now putting it into practice in my own life. No one's coming to save us. No one's coming to save me. I am out here, but I have got to find a way to make it work regardless. And stepping into that power, stepping into that courage, having the will to say, I will run through a brick wall for this. I will sit out here and eat a hot dog a day for 6 months if I have to. If this is what it takes, I'm willing to do it because I got to get where I'm going. I've got to get to where my destiny lies and what I've aimed out to accomplish and achieve. I got to do it by any means necessary. If that means sleeping in my car for 6 months out here in the wintertime, then that is just what's going to have to be done for me to make it. Now, when I make it, what I realize is, boy, I got much more power than I thought I had. I am capable of doing anything. I wish somebody would tell me what I can do, what I'm capable of, because I done been through the forest and beyond, right? Now I know I can do this, and there's nothing I can't do. I can take on anything. I can walk through whatever storm is coming. I'm prepared for it, and I will take whatever licks that are coming my way, whatever negativity, whatever naysayers there are, whatever adversity I face, I know I can overcome it because I have overcome poverty, I've overcome homelessness and a place that's very difficult to overcome it. And I just learned so much about myself and what I'm capable of. And I learned so much about this country, about this world, where there's other homeless people out there of other races. I wasn't the only person out there on the streets, just walking around. There are other people out there, and I learned so much about the system and how it betrays all of us, and that lower class and that poverty is affects so many people and how we think about ourselves and what we're capable of in the community. And so when I got out of there, I had so much more insight about what's going on in the world, about what's going on in the communities, about the ills of poverty and what people who are going through poverty, have to do sometimes to stay warm and just to survive. And so that experience of being homeless when I was a grad student for 6 months completely turned me into the person that I am today because I feel so powerful and about what I'm capable of and what I can do, and going into a PhD and dealing with all the, again, talk naysayers, getting told no, getting rejected, all that stuff rolls right off. It's nothing when you have experienced true adversity and suffering in your own life, right? And you learn so much, biblical. My mom was always telling me to pray and whatnot, and so I knew what suffering was, but I did not know the joy that you can get when you overcome suffering. Now, once you suffer and come out on the other end, the immense amount of strength and power that comes out of adversity, that comes out of suffering, is truly, truly empowering and is a life game changer. Being homeless completely changed my life. And I wouldn't be anywhere close to what I am today if I had not had that experience of homelessness.
Let me first say amen. But just listening to you, man, I just see where the passion and commitment, even in your voice, comes from, because you have been there. You know what it's like not to have certain things. And listening to you, you hear the passion, you hear the commitment in your voice just by sharing your knowledge and information and insights. But now, the listeners, we all get to know where that passion comes from, the commitment to help minority and underrepresented communities, because you know what it feels like to not have certain things. And when you know what it feels like, You're not talking to people in the community that are struggling based on knowledge that you read in a book. You have been through, you have gone through the process, knowing what it takes to overcome. But as you said, which I really take note of, is to, when you're praying for something, pray specific. Because it can just happen. You don't want to just pray for anything, lead me somewhere. I need to
Yes.
go there, not just
Mhm.
anywhere. So I
Right.
hope the listeners are listening, because that's a really important point, because a lot of times we are seeking opportunities, and because we are trying to see wherever that opportunity is, and not look to see, oh, you know what, maybe that's where I need to go. So let me pray about going there. So I appreciate that perspective, and it's a great reminder outside of, you sharing your pivotal moment of being homeless, and how that empower you to empower others. So I think that's a really powerful story in itself, and that story, can inspire others to realize that they don't have to give up, despite, dealing with adversity. My next question is, before, well, I have maybe a couple more, but what
Yeah.
life lesson have you learned late in life that you believe is important and can benefit this current generation?
Ooh, a lesson that I've learned later in life, right? Um, Nothing equals hard work. Who you know, talent and skills, height, good looks, all of those things that a lot of people, value, money, even all of those things have influence. But there is no substitute for hard work. There is no substitute for getting up every day on a grind, on a hustle, making it work. Never let someone outwork you. Someone may be better looking than you. They may be taller than you. They may have more money than you. They may even be smarter than you. But you never let them outwork you. Your work ethic is the one thing that you have control over. You
Right.
may not always be in control of your finances. You may not always be in control of who likes you and who backs you up. But what thing you can control is getting your butt up every single day on one, and hustling and grinding it out, and making sure that you leave, no stone unturned to try to get where you're trying to go. Once you make a decision about what you want to do with your life and which direction you want to go in, you got to go full steam ahead in that direction. Right. But it takes hard work. There's no substitute. There's no shortcuts coming. Right. And even if shortcuts seem enticing, you still have to put in the work.
Right.
There's no substitute for working and working hard. And the harder you work, the better prepared that you will be for when those things that you are asking for and wanting, when they come, you'll be much more prepared to receive them if you have put in the work and you have prepared yourself through the work. You've got to work. There's no substitute. There's no Chat GPT. There's no Google out there or Wikipedia out there that's going to be a substitute as a shortcut for the work. You've got to put in the work. And, as a student, I remember, so many times as a child with my chores, trying to find that shortcut. How can I sweep things under the rug? I'm trying to find a way to cut some corners. There's no cutting corners when you're trying to be somewhere successful, when you're trying to grow, when you're trying to empower, when you're trying to uplift, when you're trying to strive for greatness and being exceptional and not just falling to the standard. There's no substitute for work. You've got to do it. There's no getting around it. You either do it now or it's going to come for you later, because one day or another that bill comes due. Okay. And when that bill comes due, if you haven't prepared yourself with the work, Russell, to pay that toll, then you're going to find yourself in some unprepared situations, right? Even when you get what you want, but you're not prepared to receive it, you're going to find yourself losing what you have worked so hard to grasp, what you're so hard to achieve and accomplish, right? Is you want to not only get it, but you want to hold it and keep it and whatnot. The work, there's no substitute for hard work. And as I've gotten older, I realize more and more, even in our personal lives, even when it's just staying physically fit and your mental health, your physical health and going to the gym, there's just no substitute. There's no shortcut out there. There's no fancy diet or life, but there's none of that. The work always stands on its own. And there's no substitute for out there and putting in work and your work ethic and controlling your work ethic and doing and working hard. There's no getting around it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Hard work is the way to everything that's meaningful.
That's
in
right.
life. And that's a great reminder. If we want it, we have to be willing to work for it.
Yes.
And as you remind us, sometimes, we put in the work and it doesn't happen when we want it to happen. But guess what? The work is there. The evidence is there. So whenever the opportunity come, we all will be prepared. So don't skip out doing the work. And the work is important. And it doesn't matter where we are on our journey. The work is important.
Right.
And thanks for that reminder, because we can get around doing the work. It is so important. We got to do the work. If you are about business, if you're about change, if you're about growth, if you're about impact, doing the work is important. And even if you want to achieve your own goals, doing the work
Right.
is important. So that's a great reminder to all of us who are on the journey to make a difference. And that leads me to this question, which is before my final question. Where can the listeners find you and help support your work to make a difference? Because you are doing a tremendous job in liberating and uplifting and impacting the community. So where can they find you and support your work that you're doing?
You can find me, at Oklahoma State University. You can find me in Missouri. I still hold my house there. I'm still making the rounds. I've got a website that I continually try to post to and work on, and share some of my ideas. It's www.gravyology.com. You can find me, obviously, as you've done, on Facebook, and I'm on LinkedIn and whatnot. The knowledge that I try to share, my books can be found on, they're on Amazon and on the website too as well. My email, what else it is, I consider myself to be accessible, right? Anytime someone reaches out to me, Roses, I can be found. I'm not in some ivory tower hiding out, Roses it is. Okay, the work's got to be done, and I see myself as being a change agent, and that means I've got to be present and I have to be somewhere to be found. So you can find me in all those aspects, Roasted is. On the website, Roasted is, I try to utilize social media as much as I can in a productive way. You can find, again, my books are out there on Amazon, and the website. That's where I can be found. We do a great job on the Oklahoma State directory website. Share some great information about my works and where I can be found. My contact information is there. Reach out to me. I always try to answer back. I can be found. I'm accessible.
Okay. Could you remind us of the names of your books again?
First book is A Crisis of Leadership, the role of Black leadership and citizenship in Black America. And then the second book is At War with Politics, the evolution of traditional political science to Black politics. And they're both on Amazon.
Okay, thank you. And I hope the listeners get that. If you didn't, you can just replay until you get it. But I think you will enjoy the work that Dr. Graves have done. So my final question is, what impact do you want to have on the world?
I'm trying to change the world, man. I'm trying to change the world one day at a time, one student at a time, if I have to. I try to prepare that next generation. 100 years from now, I want someone to be able to pick up an idea or pick up a book somewhere and say, "Hey, that's Stephen Graves. You got to read that book. He's got some ideas in there that are going to change your life. Are going to make this community what it is." That's where we want to be at. This next generation. That's why I focus on college kids, and I teach and try to speak at high schools and colleges and and student clubs and student groups, because that next generation, so many times we find ourselves and our elders and sometimes in our institutions have an unwillingness to step aside and let other groups and let that next generation be empowered and lead. And so I just try to I hope to prepare that next generation so that when it's time for me to step off into the sunset and retire to a golf course somewhere, that I know that we're in good hands, that I know that our children are going to be in good hands, and that Black people find themselves in a situation 5, 10, 20 years from now that is much more liberated, much more empowered, find ourselves in much more self-determining places and spaces and institutionalized, for which, liberation seems much more graspable and practical and accomplishable. And I know sometimes it seems far away, especially as politics goes, and in the state of our country right now, we talk about race relations. But my hope is to change, and starts with the Black community and what we're capable of, and what we think and what we believe about ourselves, and to change the world. So there's how Black men in this country see themselves and the roles that Black men take in the future. When we talk about leadership, and we talk about leading, we talk about service and serving others, right? I hope to also instill that servant leadership into a next generation that understands and realizes, right, lifting as we climb, and that we're not competing with one another. We're competing against a system of oppression, and that in order to achieve the goals that we have to accomplish, it takes fellowship, commitment, and collectivism. And that I just hope to bring that amount of change in the world, for which people realize much more of what they're capable of and step into their true power, and continue to accomplish great things, not just for themselves, but for the Black community.
Man, thank you. One, for your commitment and for your stance in helping the next generation. I think it's important, and you're not only saying what you're doing what you're saying, which is important, right, as we go forward in making a difference, especially to prepare the next generation to lead. I think that is important. Right. But Dr. Graves, it's a pleasure having you here on the Black Male Impact. I know the listeners will appreciate this conversation as well as I did. I really do enjoy the conversation, the perspective, and the insights that you have shared, and how important it is for us, especially as Black men, to come together so we can move the needle forward, so we can create the change that we want to see, and how important it is for us as Black men to lift as we climb, because the change is on us. We have to take that responsibility to create the change that we want to see. And listeners, as always, thanks for being here with us. The goal for the Black Male Impact is to bring guests that we believe will share insights, perspectives, and knowledge that can benefit the community as we go forward. Please continue to support us on this journey in any way possible. Share, like, comment, or make a donation if you so feel fit, as we continue to do this work that we believe will make a difference. Thanks again for being here on the Black Male Impact.